Hey everybody, it's your boy MaxPlays104. In today's video, I'm going to show you how I'm going to make a custom LEGO architecture set today. Like I told you, I would start doing a series, and I'm going to do a comment suggestion for this video instead of one of my ones that I've already created, so I can show you the steps of how I made it and the process of making it. And today, the location we're going to go to is Madrid, Spain. So what I like to do when I get to my location is I always look around the main area in three-dimensional, and maybe sometimes look up history to see if we can find any important buildings that either are noticeable or structures that are important to the place. So buildings that I think we're going to create include this one right here, this funky looking one. I don't know the names of a lot of these because they don't say it on Google Maps, but we can always find it later. But yeah, I always try to find noticeable buildings, so we're going to do this one for sure. And then over here, I think we're going to do one of these. We're going to do this area here. We're going to do one of both of these buildings. And then we're going to do this giant pillar, the Column da Calatrava. And over here, I think we're going to do this building and maybe another one. But yeah, I think we should probably also do just another structure. But so yeah. Now we're going to head on to the part where I actually make the Lego set. Make the Lego set. So every time when I start off my Lego set, I always start it with the same sort of base piece that you use in every other Lego architecture set, and then after looking at the building for a little bit, I do my best to do a base and start designing the structure and how the base is going to work for the structure. Especially if it's built in a specific way, and usually whenever I make these things, I always have to do remakes or just change something up for better looking and easier to assemble, and it actually works. So here I'm using these sort of, I don't know, like 2x5 or 2x6 sort of rounded plates, and then I'm using these, I'm blanking on the piece names, like 2x2 brick, no 1x2 brick modified, so they have the holes in them so you can connect stuff on the sides. Because it goes pretty well with the way that the actual building is designed. And here we have a color change because the color didn't fit too well, because usually this happens every time I make a set or have a certain building that looks funky, is I'll put a color in it and then I'll be like, oh shoot, this color, it doesn't look too real. Because there's a difference between like when you're like looking at Google Earth and then you're looking on from like a street view, because then the color kind of changes because of the angle. But that's fine, because then we just do the best that we can and whatever looks the best and most like you want to get, kind of. And then we just continue the structure on until we eventually get to the point of the more difficult and challenging parts of the buildings that we have to get to, sort of like down here with the kind of connector thing. It looks almost like a kind of like a train station a little bit, but eventually we find what we're looking for, and then we just make a little connection thing, and then we got to do the street around it, which I usually typically just do like a light gray and some tiles, but sometimes I add some plants or fauna here, just to add a little bit of character so it's not always boring, sort of just gray kind of. See how I have these little trees here, and I like using these trees specifically because I think we've got them in two Lego architecture sets before, the Singapore and Dubai, but they're really unique because of the way how they're new and the perfect places you can put them in, and I use them in many of my previous sets that I've made using this program. And here we are trying to build a roof of the structure, which is a pretty interesting design, but there's trying to process how it should go and how it just keeps going, and trying to find the best sort of like rounded pieces that go around the edges and certain points of it, and then trying to find the best way for the top to be smooth but also look the best and the most accurate to the real structure. After that, we carry on to the next building in the set, which is going to be the two sort of slanted buildings with the kind of mainish areas in the middle with the large pillar in it. And so for this one, I had many different ideas for the slanted buildings, but mostly of them included using or trying to make like a rhombus kind of shaped, but then I realized how slanted that would be and how not perfect it would look. So then I decided to instead, after building this, trying to find a good disc shape for the pillar, which we eventually did, and colored it, and used a nice gold-ish color because there's no really bronze, so we tried to find a gold-bronze color. But yeah, instead here I used these sort of connector things that were bendable so you could move them. So I angled them in a specific way so they would face correctly. And then from there I just put on some plates to see and try to angle the best. And I knew that these buildings wouldn't look perfect because they typically don't. And I realized how short I had made them. And I kept trying to mess around with the top to make it more flat and more like a rounder. But it was a little bit too difficult, so I had to change it up and also make it a little bit bigger because it seemed a bit small, and it was kind of weird how the building in the middle was higher than them, which in reality it wasn't. So I then revised, went back, and I changed up the plates here, so I made them a lot higher. And so then I had to change the angle of the connector things at the bottom. But that's fine because it didn't really matter too much what the angle was as long as it was at mostly symmetrical. And then from there, after I have the structure done, I do start the color process. Sometimes I start the color process in the middle just so I can find the best pieces because each color, you can only put one color on each piece, so I have to do the best of my resources to make sure that the colors fit in where I'm putting them. And here I am just trying to mess around and trying to make it a little bit shorter down into the ground so you don't have to see the connectors as much, which I feel like is a unique technique that many LEGO sets use to hide the fact that they use them, which I think is pretty smart. And here we are finishing it up. And then in the back I added this little kind of town area or sort of structure behind the pillar, and I colored it. And then I decided to change up the sides on here to try to find sort of more blue color because the gray wasn't fitting it. And then perfect, we have this now. And I thought a little bit about how to make it more like the real building, but then again I realized that it wouldn't be much easier to try and figure out a new way. So then I started on the tallest building, I think, in the city that I saw. And usually when I make these things, I know the name of the building because I either look it up or find it, but in this case I didn't try to because I didn't think it'd be too necessary. And here I tried many different techniques for how it would fit and how I would try to build it, and then I realized, oh snap, this isn't very effective, so I tried it a different way. And my thought process was right, and it actually turned out pretty well. So I went with this sort of design where it's this main, it's got these sort of connectors on the side that went up, and then it keeps going, and then I just add the things around it, the plates, but then I added, or the tiles, but then I added plates around it just to make it a little bit thicker so it would look better at the top. And then the top is where it kind of struggled a little bit, so I tried messing around with some plates and other things, or tiles, and it didn't work as well as I thought it or hoped it would. But then I found a new technique where I just made the plates higher, and then I made it so it went sideways along it, and I just added some plates in the middle just to fill up the space, and then it looks pretty good. But then I thought, how can I make this a little bit better? Because at the top it was a little bit slanted. That is after I colored the outside. So I went with a longer piece here, and then I put these kind of curved, or not sloped edges on the top, so it went like kind of angled towards the center. And then I try to find a color sort of red thing for there because it has like some red writing on the top, so I tried to do that and I found it. And then for here, there's like this little base area between when these large sections of glass and concrete connect, so that's what the black parts are, and then the rest is the glass and concrete in the blue colors. And I just kept doing that and did it by 12, keep going up from there, and then it fit perfectly. And then I added this sort of slope, slanted curve at the top to make it look better. And then down here, I noticed that the area around the building was brighter than the concrete that I typically use, so I just made it a much higher pitch sort of gray color. And then here I just added even more different gray because I wanted to add some plants, because it can look pretty boring without plants, because it almost just looks like it's just gray, but you also want to add some like little things in it, or plants, to make it look better and more vibrant. Like this one makes a lot of other architectures look good. And here I was trying to think of which of the buildings I would do next. And what I do sometimes when it comes to these LEGO sets is I will use ideas, or I will go into my instruction booklets from previous actual LEGO architecture sets, and I would use the ideas from there to make these buildings. end designs. But then here I realized I was building the wrong part of what I'm trying to do. So then I had to redo this little part here because I was using Technic is what I needed to use, and I wasn't using the Technic pieces. So then I had to revise and change it into the Technic pieces. And the building is base starts at the bottom, so there's not this little kind of brick structure, but it wouldn't fit without the brick structure being there, so I had to keep it there, but also just make it look pretty good. So I tried to make it like not look that suspicious. So I had to put some extra little bricks around it, and here I am trying to make it and just changing the size, make it smaller so it would fit better. And then here we are trying to put the bricks around it so it doesn't look that funky. So then I just added some color to it because it made it look better, and then I started putting the Technic pieces on and how I would actually build this part itself. And I actually had an idea for it. It was inspired by one of the buildings from the LEGO Architecture Shanghai set by using the sort of triangulated Technic piece, which I didn't typically use too often when it comes to making these architecture sets, because I never really understood how physically possible it was to use them, or like how I was supposed to, because they were pretty difficult to try and figure out how to use. But eventually I did figure it out, and I just kind of went up from there on connecting it. We just keep layering on top of each other and putting more Technic pieces in to make it go higher, and just keep on trying to find the best sort of sized ones. Just keep going up and up, and then finally reach our point. And it's at the top that I tried to make it a little bit different, so I had just a little bit more up there. And then I went for the kind of roof area because it's a little bit weird at the top. So I ended up using some of these weird pieces, these more Technic pieces, but also they're kind of like straight and angled. And I kept using different techniques and trying to mess around and see what I can make using them. And we kind of came up to this design for the roof, which I thought was pretty fancy, because it kind of is layered, because there's a shorter part, and then a second, and then a higher part, and it keeps like kind of towering up, but it does only 3 layers. So then I just did a final sort of top layer here, and I used these smooth pieces because it kind of just made it better using trying to smooth it out, and just coloring back and forth these same colors, because that's the way the building looked. And then the top is where it got a little bit more confusing because there were these different colors, but there aren't too many diverse color options when it comes to LEGO pieces. I mean, there are actually a lot which are pretty useful, and a lot of them are very accurate, but sometimes you just gotta find the best one that fits the most. And then I decided to move it over a little bit just so I had more space for the next building I put, and it actually looked a lot better because I felt like it was a little bit too isolated in the corner. And then here we are putting some little patterns around it because the ground kind of is a bit different there. But then I just realized it was a little bit too much. So I just went back and changed it up a little bit, and I added a little plant because plants are cool. And then I started work on the final building, which was kind of like a square building that kind of came out towards the bottom. And at the top was more thinner. So I just went with this that I usually do, where I put these bricks back and forth around it going the other ways, and then I just put plates on it, so it would be more spread out, and I had to move it over a little bit so it would fit better. And then I put tiles over it to smoothen it out, so it looked pretty good, and put one on the top for the roof. And then we basically have finished it, the skyline part. Now we just had to do the rest of the architecture part, where we just put these sort of smooth parts around it, and then put the nameplate on it, and then just do a little spin, marvel at it. And then here comes the fun part, where we have to do a render. So then we're in the rendering process, which doesn't take too long. You change the colors of it and stuff, and then you save it to your files, and then it starts to render. It takes a little bit longer than this, or actually a lot longer depending on what kind of computer you have. Mine goes pretty fast, so then I have it done, and then boom, rendered, boom, and then save the regular parts and come back to it later. And that's basically it from there, yeah. I was actually really happy with the way that this turned out. It looked a lot cooler than I expected it to, which I guess happens a lot with other things, but I had a little bit of an idea for this from last night. I was like, I could probably do this because it actually looks pretty simple and easy to make. So I just kind of went on from there, and it turned out really well. And I also really hope that you guys enjoyed this video, because I'm going to be making more like this. I might make ones not with the building process because I didn't record that, and I just kind of making them for fun. But I'll probably do some review sets of ones that I've reviewed and built. But also, don't forget to leave your suggestions in the comments of what cities you want me to build next. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!